So, hi Andrew.
Let me take my shoes off. Hi Tatiana, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
Very good, nice to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you here. Can you tell me a little bit of story what's happened with you and with your teaching? And where are you up now?
So it's a big question, so you want a short version?
As deep as you can.
I would need 3 hours.
I'm fine.
Do you want to hear more about my personal story or about the philosophy of the Dharma?
Both of that.
Okay.
Because your personal story, I think it's very connected with philosophy, otherwise.
I think so also. So basically I had a powerful community for about 27 years. And I was teaching Evolutionary Enlightenment, a future-oriented, integrally informed approach to the evolution of consciousness. It was very progressive, very future-oriented. And the structure of the community that gathered around me, which is an international community, was very much based on a mythic hierarchy or a mythic power structure. Mythic. The mythic structure comes from the traditional era, time when the great religious traditions emerged. So there was a very strict and rigid developmental hierarchy. And because I was teaching a very progressive, sophisticated form of evolutionary spirituality, I was very much teaching enlightenment in the context of cultural evolution and the need for culture to evolve. So most of my students were quite sophisticated and came from a postmodern background. And what I came to understand was that the postmodern stage of cultural development was the first time when a culture of unique individuals was born. It was postmodern culture was the first time in history when the cultural idea was to become a unique individual. Up until that time in history, most adults were living according to roles, wanting to be the father, wanting to be a mother, wanting to be a farmer, or wanting to be a dentist or a doctor. The idea of becoming a unique individual or having a unique personal identity that was going to somehow contribute to the evolution of culture was a relatively new idea at a cultural level, even though there have always been extraordinary and unique individuals who were very creative, who contributed in extraordinary ways throughout history. So the reason I'm saying all that is that in the traditional model, which is very much centered around a powerful teacher or guru figure, the context of ego submission and ego surrender is a fundamental vehicle through which, within the traditional model, the traditional teaching structure, the path to the illumination of awareness is through submitting one's personal will to the spiritual power of the awakened teacher, and throughout that process, through that kind of process, when it's successful, one experiences a state of transcendental freedom from being trapped within the confines of the small self. And so I had a very powerful community for a long time. We were working with a lot of very powerful ideas, but the spiritual hierarchy with me at the top.
Can you explain me what do you mean by hierarchy? Like you was in the top and was someone
underneath. Yeah.
So how many of lawyers?
I can't remember. It depended which time, but
no, in general, it's 100 or it's just
no.
There
might have been 5 different levels.
5.
But all I'm saying is that the hierarchical structure was very strong historically, and it's a structure that I was working with as a teaching. It served a function in my teaching. But because most of my students came from a postmodern background, I came to understand that for a postmodern adult to be able to fully become self-actualized, you need to fully be able to individuate. in the old traditional system, if you meet a powerfully realized teacher who touches your heart and awakens your mind, the response to that is and you recognize your guru. You have an experience of a recognition in the context of a profound spiritual awakening. One feels called to surrender and to submit. And then in the traditional model, the feeling is, I will be with this teacher, I'll be with this guru forever. What I wasn't aware of is some of my older students, my most senior students, who'd been with me for a long time, they needed to be able to fully individuate. They needed to leave home. They needed to leave from being very close with the father figure, which was me. And I didn't see that they had a healthy developmental need to outgrow me as a teacher and the tight context of our community. I didn't understand this. I didn't recognize it. So this led to a conflict, which led to the dissolution of the community.
Did you have in your hierarchy the possibility to grow for them?
No, the hierarchical structure of the community as a vehicle for growth was working for like 27 years. But at the end of this 27-year period, the top of the hierarchy where I was needed to open up, and it needed to become a space of much more creative freedom, without me being in the most powerful position, and that didn't happen. I think had the top of the hierarchy opened up, had I opened it up, and created a much different kind of structure, I think the situation would be very different. But I held on very, very tightly because I felt if I let go of power, everything would fall apart, and that's actually what happened.
So inside this hierarchy was not like a structure when I, as a student, can become your student and finally сместить вас, можете, get your place.
No.
No.
It wasn't possible.
So, why it wasn't possible?
No, it wasn't possible. It wasn't possible. So then I took some time off from teaching, and I've done a lot of thinking, and I'm still thinking a lot about the fact that we need different kinds of structures for spiritual teachings to work more effectively at this time in history. Ones that are, yeah, but the ones that where the hierarchical structures are very much more fluid and less rigid.
And did you get an idea how to organize that?
I'm working on it. I'm still working on it, and I'm thinking a lot about it. But I think the primary difference is that in the old model, the submission of the student was the catalyst for their own awakening, and I think in the new context, the student has to be able and willing and desirous to take full responsibility for their own autonomy and they're holding on to their own power throughout the whole process.
But if you are much stronger and much more aware than me, for example, how can I be fully responsible?
You have to be.
I can't. I'm not so developed as you.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean you have to give up your power.
But I even don't have any power at the moment. Might don't have any power.
Everybody does. Everybody does. Yeah.
Yeah,
But often in the relationship between a realized teacher and a student, in the context of submission, there's a giving up of personal will and personal power, which might have worked very, very well in a traditional cultural context, but that can never work in postmodernity. And that's why so many powerful experiments with great teachers and lots of students have failed so miserably, because I think that the structure of the structures of the community and the structures that have grown up around realized teachers are very much outdated. They're very much still from the traditional time and culture. So I think what needs to happen now is that the structures very much need to evolve to keep up with our new understandings of cultural evolution.
Can I share something?
Anything you want.
We have a spiritual guru in Russia. He died already, but his name Boris Zolotov. He kind of mystical guy, and he created also the teaching and school, and he created the type of practices. He called it expert operator. practices. Like one is a leader, another one is a follow.
Yeah.
And the leader should be more developed.
Has to be.
Has to be. And so ideally the idea is that someone who is following the leader is getting the qualities of the leader through this process.
That's a very good idea.
And it could, but finally, as a follower, I can reach your qualities,
Your level.
And even sometimes I can overcome it.
Sure, you could surpass that person.
Yeah. So what's but for the beginning, I necessarily should give up.
No, I think yes, I agree with you, but I think that in the new structure, it's very important that nobody gives up their power at any stage.
But if you will be leading, I am following, so I'm kind of giving my
I understand,
power.
Tatjana. I'm saying something different.
Okay.
You can follow, and you can learn, and you can grow without giving up your power. That's my point. I know you don't agree with that, but that's my point.
What does it mean? Okay, maybe I just don't understand it.
It means that you give up your own will, your own willpower. Blind and total submission to the will of the guru, to the will of the spiritual teacher. Not my will, but thy will be done. Unconditional surrender, which is fabulous, but it should never happen in the context of a human relationship between a teacher and a student anymore, I don't think.
But in this case, like in postmodernistic society, I will doubt everything.
And the postmodern ego is a very difficult one because it's very narcissistic, very superior, always knowing better.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a kind of blind, insane, egoic attachment to remaining separate, remaining superior. And that's why there's a unique challenge at this time for liberation. But I think in spite of that, and or because of it, because the thing is, if there's unconditional surrender, later on it's going to lead to resentment and anger.
Why?
Because when the person comes back into their ego, they're going to feel humiliated. They'll feel humiliated that they trusted so deeply and then let go so deeply.